Hi, friends. Thank you for tuning in to the Concussion Coach podcast. I'm Bethany Lewis, the Concussion Coach. I'm a neurological occupational therapist and certified life coach, and I specialize in guiding people through their concussion recovery journey. I am passionate about helping people understand their injury, speed up their recovery, and reclaim control over their life post-concussion. The purpose of this podcast is to help increase awareness of concussions and the impact they can have on a person's life, and to bring hope to people who have suffered a concussion and those who love them. I firmly believe that sharing stories and knowledge about concussions will bring important light and understanding to this misunderstood and often invisible injury. The information in this podcast is meant to bring that awareness and hope and is not meant as medical advice. The opinions shared are those of the interviewees and my own. If you are suffering with lingering concussion symptoms, I have created a concussion coaching program specifically for you. I will be your mentor to guide you through your recovery journey, offering help with understanding and managing your symptoms, setting achievable goals, and learning how to manage your own thoughts and nervous system in order to get control over your life again. If this program sounds like something that would help you or someone you love, sign up for a free consultation. In the consultation, you'll get valuable information and resources and gain hope for your future. Sign up for your free consultation at the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Concussion Coach podcast. I am excited today to have my friend and fellow brain injury coach, Caysie Blair, join me as we chat with her friend Avery Peterson and Avery's mom, Caysie, and we'll get to hear about Avery's experience with head injury recovery. So thanks all of you for being here. And I'd like to just have us start off with Avery and Caysie introducing yourselves. Tell us where you're from, how you know Kaylee, a little bit of background about you.
Okay, I guess I'll start. I'm Avery. I also go by Avery Jade or Avery Peterson, whatever you're feeling like. From Utah. Kind of lived all over, but born and now reside in Utah. And I know Kaylee because she helped me vision therapy, which was one of the many therapies that I did after my traumatic brain injury, which I sustained in 2019.
And I am Avery's mom, Caysie Riley, and I have 5 kids. Avery would be my second. Same thing. I met Kaylee from taking Avery to vision therapy, and she was so awesome. She was one of Avery's favorites.
For good reason.
Yes, she's amazing. Yep. And I'm in Utah. We've been kind of all around. We've been Cleveland, Indiana, and now back to Utah.
Well, excellent. Thank you. Let's hear you guys share a little bit about what happened. You said that you got your traumatic brain injury in 2019. How old were you then? And tell us about the circumstances there.
So, long story short, because it's a very long story, I was living in Heber. I was a senior in high school, and it was prom day. And in Utah, we do prom day dates, which is just like a fun date during the day.
Senior prom.
Yeah, it was my senior prom. So it was the grand hurrah. My group, dance group, was going rappelling up in Soldier Hollow. And the boys that we were going with had experience and they tested everything. I was really nervous, but I was going to try anyways. And I think I pinched my hand in the carabiner as I was going down. And so I instinctively let go, and I fell about 20 to 25 feet and hit my head twice on the way down before I was caught by the belayer in his arms.
Wow. So he wasn't able to stop you. Usually the belayer is able to stop the fall on the way.
Usually.
Okay. It probably just happened really fast. And
oh man,
bunch of teenagers.
It's a bunch of teenagers, and
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So he caught you in his arms. Were you conscious still?
So they said if I would have hit the ground, I would have died on impact. But from his arms, I was able to mutter my dying wish, which was, please God, don't let me die. I've only ever kissed 2 boys. Yeah, I know, right?
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about. And after that, I became unconscious and I was having seizures and strokes. And yeah, from there, my group, they called 911. We had people arriving. I was carried on like
down the mountain
on like a stretcher to an ambulance that drove me to the parking lot where a life flight was waiting because they had to get me to a hospital as soon as possible.
Yeah.
We found out months later, actually, at an appointment, like a rehab appointment, that I actually coded and died on life flight, and they had to resuscitate me. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's interesting that you didn't find that out till months later. I don't know.
I think it's probably because they weren't real concerned about things like that. They were just like trying to keep her alive. So we didn't have a lot of information
about the logistics of what exactly happened.
Yeah. So it was our family doctor later that told us that. So at this point, we showed up at the hospital and we had no idea what to expect. We just knew that she was like life flighted. So she was at the Murray ICU, and they told me and my husband that like she had a brain injury and our lives would never be the same, and that we would be there for a long time. When we first saw her, she was very gray. They had put like a tube down her throat, and she just kind of looked like she was sleeping, but kind of dead. But they ended up, when they put the tube down her throat, it paralyzed her vocal cord. That's why
I have a scratchy voice.
She has a scratchy voice, and it's kind of quiet. But yeah, that was like the beginning of a really long adventure.
And it's really just the stuff I've been dealing with that came with it that has been kind of crazy, because I didn't just have a brain injury. I had strokes. I had seizures. I coded. I had blood trapped in my spinal column, and they thought I was going to be paralyzed. I had blood clots. I had collapsed lungs. I had lacerated kidneys. I had like pneumonia several times, 3 different times. I aspirated on my flight. I had all these different things. I had my ear bones broke one of the times that I hit the mountain. So they're broken in half, and I'm 100% deaf in my right ear. And there's no fixing that. I got a cochlear implant and wore that for a year, but that my brain couldn't really learn how to hear with it. And so I will be half deaf for my whole life. And when I hit that right side, I also broke my optic nerve. So my right eye was actually full of blood, and they had to do surgery to clean that out. And they weren't sure if they'd be able to fully clean it out or how deep the blood went. They were able to clear it out, but I was left with a very bad lazy eye. And so I was constantly seeing double, and the broken ear bones made me constantly dizzy and nauseous, because that controls your balance system. So it's been a lot.
But let's go back to like the hospital where she had a diffusal axonal injury, like the shearing of like the wiring in your brain is what they said. And at that point, they had told us it's not a real great outcome.
When I first got in the hospital, I was in a coma. And after all the testing, the MRIs, the CT scans, all the testing, they told my parents that there would be a 90% chance that I would never wake up from the coma. And if I was in the rare 10% that did, I would be in a vegetative state, because they said my brain had zero activity and that I was kind of beyond, recovery.
Wow. So it was like very dire prognosis there. Like it was either not coming out of the coma at all or being in a vegetative state. Like that was like the 100% within, it was either of those. Wow.
Yeah. So when she was in her coma, a lot of times also they would pinch her arms and her thighs really hard to try to get her to like react to that. And she didn't. She had bruises from them pinching her up and down her arms and legs. And I think that's why they ended up doing the MRI and finding the DAI. At that point, they also thought that she would probably be paralyzed.
Because I had blood trapped in my spinal column, and they couldn't really do much to help that because I had like a blood clot, and they didn't want to create any further issues.
Wow. So how long did you end up being in the coma for?
My mom actually guessed. A mama knows best. She knew it was going to be 12 days. Because 1 week was too short and I needed time to heal my brain, and 2 weeks was too long. So she said 12 days.
Yep.
And she was right. On day 12, I started waking up. And
it's definitely not like the movie.
I hate how they portray it in the movies because it's not like that at all. I was basically a newborn and I had to relearn everything. I knew like people I had known for a really long time, but like I didn't know what happened to me. I didn't know where I was. I didn't know like what had been happening. Like I forgot everything.
But also when you wake up from a coma, you don't just like wake up. It was like we had to be like, is she awake? Is she asleep? Like what? I don't know what this is. Like there were several. Yeah, it was several days of her just like laying there.
But opening her eyes, like being able to
like,
interact at all.
Yeah, like
starting to.
Yeah, like the way they consider you're awake from a coma is if they say, Avery, squeeze my hand, and she squeezes it, and you say, Avery, let go, and she lets go. That's them saying she's awake from her coma. As if she's doing things
on command
that you ask her to. Yeah, so it's not even necessarily like eyes open. It's more that she's following directions, I guess.
But it took a long time to get to a point where I was doing more, and I had to relearn how to do everything.
It starts with like just following something with her eyes, tracking. Like that took, I mean, it's just so interesting. Like she would go to PT and they would hand her a wash rag and they'd be like, Avery, wash your face. That was like her PT. It was like her trying to get the washcloth up to her face. And I mean, I couldn't be in the room for those. That was too hard to, see your 18-year-old. Like that's not even being able to like wash her face with a wash rag. So it was little things like they would give her a bottle and tell her to screw the lid on or take the lid off. But slowly she would start to, she couldn't talk for a long time because of the paralysis, and she had a trach in. So, but she had to relearn to eat. They had to train her to sleep. I mean, potty training, 18-year-old. She couldn't walk. She had to relearn to walk up and down stairs, just like tie her shoes. It's everything.
Yeah. How long, I know there's probably so many more details we could go into, but how long was this overall process from injury to when you were able to leave the hospital?
So I was in the hospital for 68 days.
Okay. That's
12 of those
faster than I was imagining.
The 12 of those days I was in a coma, but overall I was in the hospital for 68 days.
Well, and that was also rehab. Like she went from IMC to primary children's where they did inpatient rehab, which was amazing. Luckily, since she was 18, we were able to kind of get a pass for her to be there. And it was a really great experience.
It was so much better than if I had just gone to like an adult assisted center.
Yeah, that's what they wanted to do.
No.
I'm so glad you pushed for primaries. They're known for their inpatient rehab skills. And
that's the hard thing. When you're in a situation like that, I mean, we did not know anyone with a brain injury. We were able to have a few different people contact us while we were there, the wards and Bendas, and they were able to tell us what they did and how they got their kids. And like one of the moms really pushed with the people at Primary Children's, and she was able to help us out. So it was so great to have people who had gone through it before us.
Yeah. Did they, as you bring that up, it makes me wonder if did people like hook you up with a support group, or like while she was still in the hospital, did you have any kind of interaction with others who've gone through something similar?
I was able to, at first, people would reach out to me and say, we've gone through this. And at that point, I didn't want to talk to them because I kind of knew their outcome. And I didn't want to think that my child was going to have the same outcome. Mm-hmm. But as it kind of progressed, we ended up meeting one family who had already gone through it. So it was really great to be able to talk to the mom. I wish that there was more of a support group. So even now I try to reach out to people because it would be nice to know, like, how do you get the glue dots out of your hair after the EEG, or like all these, or how to potty train an 18-year-old. Like it would be nice to have this support group, that people could help guide you through that, or at least have tips and advice. So I didn't have a whole lot, no, but it was nice to be able to, I guess, talk to one or two people. If I had looked online, I'm now in a couple of groups for caregivers of traumatic brain injury patients. So I just wasn't ready for that, but it probably could have been helpful at the time if I had done that.
Okay. That's good to know that it does exist. It just, you weren't ready for it at that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I do have a lot of people reach out to me. My husband did an Instagram account for her where he journaled everything. And so we had thousands of followers. And I think like recently somebody's sister-in-law was in an accident. She was able to reach out to me and say, hey, what do we need to do? Who do we need to talk to? So I think that's been good to be able to help other people who are going through the same thing. Because it's a nightmare.
I cannot even imagine, but I really do appreciate that, the turning this thing, using this to help other people, obviously very helpful for them, but maybe a little bit therapeutic for you as well. And that's cool. We'll have you tell us if you guys are comfortable and want to share the Instagram account. So if people are interested, we can put that in the show notes as well. But so as you were going through this intense recovery process, what therapies did you use? What things have you tried in and out of the hospital that were effective and helpful for you?
So with my constant double vision, I did vision therapy. And that actually helped me enough to where I didn't need a second eye surgery.
Awesome.
So that was awesome.
Well, I was able to teach her brain how to
like work with my eyes
and make it one again.
Yeah.
So if she does now struggle with double vision, she can just make it go back, which that was huge. And without her friend's mom just saying, hey, I bought you your first session, go visit this guy, like we wouldn't have even known about it. That wasn't something anybody told us about at the hospitals or anything.
They just suggested, okay, it looks like you need another surgery.
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to ask if they had how you found about that's really interesting and really good to know. And it's such a nice thought of like a friend to like say, here, I paid this, like that's a cool way to serve someone that I hadn't thought of before. That's really cool.
It was amazing. And I think it also helped with, I want to say it was there too, Kaylee, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong, but she was really struggling with multitasking. Like one of the examples was we were in Target and she needed to get some granola bars. And so in her head, she's just thinking granola bars, maybe kind of thinking which aisle are the granola bars. And she just kind of cut off a lady in front of her shopping cart. And I saw the lady turn around and like scowl at her. And it made me like really sad to think like, I'm thinking this is amazing that she's in the store, going to go find granola bars, remembers she needs granola bars, and she just didn't like look both ways, right? And I think I shared this with Kaylee, and she started doing some multitasking things where she would lay on the ground, like arch her back and stuff, and try
to like put my arms and legs up, and then I'd have to answer like questions that my mom
would say, like name 10 cereals, and she would do that while doing
and try not to like let my arms and legs like come down and waver.
Yeah, so they helped with a lot of other things, not just vision, I felt like. So that was one of the most helpful therapies.
That, I did balance therapy. I've done PT for a while. I did speech.
Well, you still do PT.
Yeah, not as much. I mean, chronic pain is probably one of the hardest things that I still deal with to this day. No doctor, no neurologist, no pain clinic. No one can figure out why I hurt or what's wrong with me.
Where, if you don't mind sharing, where is the pain?
Basically, like I get really bad headaches. My jaw really hurts. My neck, my shoulders, my full back, my sides,
all over.
That's constant,
and it hasn't gone away. And
it's probably associated with her brain. Like her nerves are telling her she's in pain because they can't find like anything wrong.
I'm not sure. And I did like a nerve therapy too, and that helped a bit, but we haven't been able to find something to actually heal whatever is happening.
Okay, so if anybody listening out there has ideas, put them in the show note or put them in the comments so we can.
Yes, please. We've tried everything. She's done Calmare, she's done red light, She takes CBD, and that seems to be the only
Cannabis
thing that will help with the pain.
Because Tylenol and ibuprofen, it's not even strong enough to.
And we don't
really
want to do
help.
pain medication, really.
Yeah.
What
I get massages every week. That has helped. But what other therapies?
What other therapies was helpful after? Do you think?
Didn't do like OT.
Yeah.
Yeah, I did like occupational therapy for a little bit, speech for a little bit. Honestly, mental health therapy was huge too.
Mm-hmm.
After my accident, I didn't know who I was because I had forgotten everything about my life previously. I lost every memory. I was really struggling because for a long time, I had a hard time keeping memories. I had a hard time. I couldn't do a lot of things that everyone else my age could do, like drive or work or go to school or.
Well, and don't you think there's a pressure to be that other person? Like people will talk before Avery. Like you get people saying, "Oh, but you would have done this," and "Oh, you loved
people
this."
Have been like, but like, yeah, they would kind of talk about like the old me, like the pre-accident me that like loved oldies music and would, do all this stuff. And I just wanted to be me again so badly that I was just trying to like go back to the old me, but that's not who I was anymore. Like I wasn't like a huge oldies fan anymore. Like things just changed and I just grew and I had to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do.
So your therapist was, and there's a lot of depression that comes along with that.
I was unhappy.
When her friends were serving missions, going to college, and she's
getting married,
learning how to, I don't know, shower by yourself or like all these things that she was really sad about seeing them being able to move on and her not being able to.
It was like starting at square one again because I had to figure out who I was, what I loved, what I wanted to do.
What would you say to somebody who may be going through something like that if they've had a serious brain injury or in that kind of like they feel like they've lost themselves stage? What advice do you have for them?
It was hard because I couldn't do what everyone else was doing. Dating after a brain injury was insanely difficult. 95% of the guys, as soon as they heard that I had a traumatic brain injury, I was ghosted, and I never heard from them again.
What would your advice to them be?
I'm kidding. But honestly, it'll get better. Even if it doesn't feel like it will get better. Even if you don't know how, all the effort that I put in to finding healing and finding peace and finding who I was, it all paid off. Even if it felt like day after day, I was just trying my hardest, but my efforts weren't really doing much. It was, even if I was exhausted.
And what did help you through that time? Like, as far as you said that you had mental health therapy or some kind of treatment that you were going through there. Sounds like that was helpful. Anything else that was instrumental in helping you find yourself and love yourself through all of this?
So yeah, having a good therapist was definitely helpful. But I just had to figure out who I was. I knew things that I loved. And so I put time and effort into that, into art and into crafting and into spending time with the people I loved, like my family and friends. And I made new friends and
keeping busy.
Yeah, keeping busy was also good because, I don't know, it was just a good way to feel like I was actually doing something.
Mm-hmm.
What kinds of things kept you busy? What were you able to do?
Like I said before, I love to craft. I got back into photography, and now that's what I'm actually pursuing.
Cool. Painting.
Yeah, I got into painting. I do like macrame, stuff like that.
Even just like going to lunches with friends and just getting out and feeling like a teenager. I think was really important.
Yeah, it was really nice to just feel like I could just go have fun. And
I think it was also important to realize like maybe you weren't going to go to college, but you could take an online class or just do like things that made you feel like you were doing an adult instead of being taken care of by your parents. And
yeah, that's awesome. And as you bring up the friends thing, I'm curious with I'm sure, and you kind of mentioned the social life changes, things are different, right? How did that play out for you? And how did you manage the social dynamic? Did you want to tell people about it? Did you feel like you had, like, how do you talk about it to people and how are you doing?
I still have a lot of close friends I had in high school, but I definitely lost people, a good amount of people, that it was too much for them. They wanted to pretend like it didn't happen, so they left.
I think it was too hard for them.
Yeah, so I lost a lot of people that were important to me when I was in high school, but
you have amazing friends.
But I had a group of girlfriends and we still talk to each other. Like, we still hang out every so often. I made new friends. Like, some of them were even like middle-aged, like my mom's age, but I was out like going to the temple and they saw me and had been following along with the Instagram and my story, and they stopped me and wanted to invite me to dinner, and like, she just became such a good friend to me and would just like take me out to lunch and just.
So because of your accident, she has met people because of it.
Oh, yeah.
And everywhere she goes, everybody loves her. Like, one of her therapies, she would go swim and do stuff in the pool, and all the old ladies there loved her and were all her best.
That's so cute.
I can attest to that too. Avery was always one of the favorites.
Yeah. People are drawn to it.
You have this light about you, and even though you're going through something so crazy, you persist and you heard and you had a smile while you did it. And if you cried, it was okay. Like, it was okay to have the emotional outbursts, and it was okay. You just had a good way about it.
Thank you, Kaylee. Yeah, I definitely had harder days, and it has not been easy in the slightest. But this is actually, I mean, besides like my photography, which is Avery Jade Photo Co. and it makes me so happy, and I work on that. I also started a podcast called Avery's After Hour Thoughts. And I haven't made a new podcast in a while because I've actually turned more towards having like an Instagram, and I'm actually starting a YouTube channel about it called The Bravery Effect. A lot of people are so shocked that I am so positive and happy and so gung-ho, even though I've been through all these crazy things, and even though I hurt 24/7, and even though I lost so much. And I don't know, I'm always been the kind of person that you can be going through the worst of the worst, but your attitude will make up 80% of it. And so I've been trying to share things I've learned and insight and inspiration with others about not letting life and the difficulties you face dictate whether or not you have a happy, good life, because you can.
Yeah, and I think like as mom, and one of the things that I like to do, we talked a little bit about, is just to kind of help other parents in the situation see like there can be a good outcome. Even if the doctors give you the worst, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the worst. It just means, I mean, it's going to be hard, but it's so important to, even sitting in the hospital when they would tell us these things, I would tell my husband, no, that's not true. That's not going to happen. Avery's going to be fine. Avery's going to walk. Avery's a dancer. Like, she has to dance. She's not going to be in a wheelchair her whole life. And I think it's okay to have hope that they're going to be better than what the doctors are saying.
That's beautiful. And I imagine that, yeah, there's definitely something to hope and faith in better outcomes. And, you know, I think even if you were in a wheelchair forever, you would still have so much light and goodness to share with the world, right? Like, it's not like, I think that's really, really beautiful and a powerful message. With your Instagram, and I'm so excited that you shared all of that. We're going to definitely post all of that in the show notes. So at the end, I want you to like tell us what all of those websites and podcast names and everything are again. It sounds like your main message that you want to get out there is hope and light and goodness. Like, are there specific things, or like, if you want to I'd love to hear some of the things that you'd like to share, those messages of hope for people.
Yeah, I feel like a big emphasis on the messages I share are that crap will happen in your life. Sometimes your life will really suck, right? Like, bad things happen in this world all the time. But that doesn't mean that you can't be happy, and that doesn't mean that things won't get better. Because things could always be worse, but things will always get better. It's just what I've come to believe ever since my accident. Because sometimes things did get worse. Like my pain has gotten worse, but I'm managing. I'm trying to figure out ways constantly to help it. I'm figuring out how to live my life being in pain all the time. Like I have to figure things out as I go, but that's not to say that I can't be happy and I can't have a fulfilling life and I can't do things. Like I'm married now. Like there was a time when I was scared that like no one would ever want to marry me because of all the things. It was so hard. And guys would freak out as soon as they heard like all that I still deal with and all the lifelong impairments that I would have. But my husband, we met in our young single adult ward here in Elkridge. We both moved home, like a few months apart, actually, in like the fall of 2023. I don't know, like not last fall, but the fall before that. And he was, as soon as he heard me telling about like my story and my hope and faith and who I was, he instantly decided that he had to get to know me, that he had to, ask me on a date and just be close to me because he was just drawn to the light and hope and love that I was just oozing out of me.
Well, and it came at a time where you were really down and struggling with friends getting married and being alone, and you never.
And I just moved home from.
It was a really hard time,
and then college housing, and it was just I was frustrated because I don't know. I feel like a lot of times with the brain injury, you can totally do whatever you want to do. The thing is, though, it'll take double the effort, double the work, and probably double the length of time.
Mm-hmm. Just harder.
Most of the days, I end the day being absolutely exhausted.
Yeah, I was going to probably take double the recovery time as well afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to be able to find a guy that like gets that he's fine with
he's okay
staying in and not having, to go out all the time.
If I'm really hurting and we were going to go do something else, he's fine to just stay at home and do something. And he, pays for my massage subscription. So every week I can go try to help my crappy back and neck. And he still thinks I'm incredible and amazing.
There's hope for people. Like, even if you just don't think it's going to happen to you.
You can.
It's just patience.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, Kaylee, did you have any questions that you want to throw out there?
I was going to say, not just patience, but not being afraid to share the light that you have. That's something Avery is not ashamed of. She's very, very much Avery. And that's part of what's amazing about her.
Yep.
I had decided, before my accident, I was not this outgoing. I was not this talkative to strangers. I was not this. I was definitely like a fun, like energetic person. But after my accident, I decided I just didn't care if I didn't know someone. Like, if I'm going to go through something that insane, and if I have a chance to make the world a better place by inspiring others and sharing like light and insight and hope with the world, I was going to do whatever I could to do so.
And I love that every time we go somewhere, she compliments the workers, she becomes best friends with the doorman at Walmart. Like she just has a good time and wants everyone to feel good.
That's amazing. I love that was a change that happened after, like this experience has allowed you to open up like that. Again, this message of, things can be good on the other side of this really hard and bad, right? Like that's a really, really beautiful thing. Thank you for sharing that.
I was strong before my accident, and I was smart before my accident, and I was kind before my accident. I was a lot of good things, but my accident was my refiner's fire. It was what turned me into the person that I am today. And even though it was insane and I would not want to have to relive it again anytime soon, I'm not angry that it happened because it turned me into who I am now. And it just helped me grow and become the best version of me.
Amazing. Thank you. It never ceases to amaze and inspire me when I hear people say that, because but I hear it all the time. And I just, again, this is part of what the message that I am hoping with this podcast to get out there is like, especially to the people who are in the middle of it and not seeing the light at the other side, that there can be so much goodness, and that people they want what they become through these experiences. That's so inspiring. You mentioned before your faith. I would love if you don't mind sharing how faith has impacted this experience for you.
Well, I am LDS.
Can you explain what that is for people who might not be?
Yeah. So I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and it's always been an important part of my life because I love having the hope that it gives me, the hope of being able to learn and grow and become better and, get to and have a knowledge of after this life, it's not just over, right? Like after this life, like it's you keep going, like you take what you learn in this life and you keep learning and growing and becoming the best you. And so I love having that faith that even if this life is hard, it's for something. It's not just because I was somehow here and I'm just going through these things just to get through them. I'm trying to become the best me in this life. And I love having that knowledge and that faith that, okay, I'm doing my best in this life and it's only going to get better.
Thank you. Well, if you could go back in time, and this is for both of you guys, what advice would you give yourselves in the early days of the injury and this whole process?
That's a tough one.
I would tell myself it's going to be okay. Not even just okay. It's going to be great. Even if it feels like everything, including myself, is a mess, it's going to get better. And I'm going to have to try really hard, but it'll all be worth it. And I would remind myself that I have a lot to live for and a lot to fight for.
She has a better answer than me. If I could go back, I think the thing that I would do was put everybody in therapy. I wish that I would have realized how important it is for all of the kids' mental health. I guess I didn't realize the impact that this would have on us long term. We have several, like with PTSD, anxiety, depression, suicidal, all the things that we have one that's turning into a hoarder at 12 because has a hard time losing things. So I wish that I would have known how important it is for everybody, maybe to see therapists and to make that a priority. That's
a really important insight. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that is a question I was going to ask, but had skipped. So how did this impact the family, the people around you that were close to you? I guess it sounds like it was a bigger impact than you had expected. So if you don't mind sharing.
Yes. So I guess in this situation, what happens is we lost somebody. I know Avery's sitting right here next to me, but we lost somebody since she is somebody different now. So that's grief that we'll always deal with. So the relationships they had built with Avery as siblings is now different because Avery doesn't remember having those relationships with them. So I think that's a hard thing. Siblings were at, how old were they? Older sibling was a best friend and they were 2 years apart. So 20 when you were 18 and then 14, 12, and 7. So those are the ages where they were starting to build friendships. And that was it still is hard. They all go to therapy and the impact it's had on our family. You almost feel guilty because like I said, Avery's sitting right here. She's alive. She's well, but we still have that grief and loss. And on top of that, it's terrifying to send your kids out into the world after you almost lost one. So trying to navigate kids going on dances now, knowing Avery almost died on a dance, it's a struggle. It's a struggle that we deal with.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was really hard because I could see what like my accident did to my family. And I almost felt guilty, right? Like I felt like it was my fault, but it's not like I wanted that to happen. It's not like I tried to hurt anyone. It's not like I tried to change relationships, but through no fault of my own, it happened and it did change things because I became a different person. All of a sudden they felt like I was different and our relationships were different, and everything we had built up until then was lost on my part and kind of for them too. And so it was just a hard trying to figure out what comes next. What do we do? How do we rebuild what was lost? How do we find a way to be okay with what has happened?
Do you have any advice or thoughts for people who might be going through something like that? Like how did you do it? Because it sounds like it's kind of starting from scratch with figuring yourself out and then figure out your relationship to other people and theirs with you. Like,
definitely.
Yeah.
I had to figure out who I was again because I didn't know. I had lost the 18 years that I had previously spent figuring out and growing and building relationships, and I had to start from square one again to figure out who I was, what was important to me, what I wanted. And from there, it's been trying to find ways to repair what was lost. Like, okay, how can I reach out to this sibling? Like, what can we talk about? What can we do together? How? It's basically just trying to figure out like ways to kind of start over again with them. Like, what's going to build that foundation? What's going to help us like continue to get close? It just takes a lot of effort and just trying different things to see what helps.
And I think it's also on the family's part to go from little sister at 12, so excited that Avery can clap her hands or wave goodbye. We almost had to go through these different stages, and it changes throughout each stage. And I think when we finally got to a place where they could pretty much start new relationships and build new things, I think that's been putting in the time and recognizing. I think it's important for families, siblings, everyone to recognize okay, Avery has a bad memory. So let's not keep bringing up remember this, remember that. We just barely talked about this. You can't, we don't want to make her feel bad for her disabilities or injury. So just reminding everybody yes, but look what she's gone through. Look what she's dealing with. I think that's really helpful. They need reminders for that because they are kids.
And you feel like the therapy has been helpful as well, like bringing in an outside source to help manage that as well?
Yeah, I think it's been huge because, like I said, my youngest starting to show hoarding tendencies because he has a hard time letting go of things. I would hate for him to grow up with that and have that. So I'm glad that we can maybe pass it on to the professionals and be like, okay, we need help with this. And they've just been so great. I think our mental health, just having therapists, has overall been so much better the last 5 years.
That's awesome.
I'm curious about, was it trial and error with therapists? Were you able to find therapists pretty easily for your situation? What was that for you? What was it like?
Well, for me personally, I had a hard time finding a good therapist at first because I was on Medicaid after my accident, and only one specific clinic is covered by Medicaid. So I was having a hard time finding a good therapist there. And so it was just trial and error of finding a therapist who takes my insurance, who I felt understood me and worked with me in a way that was beneficial instead of not, I guess. But eventually I did find a good therapist, and I've been seeing him for a few years now.
Yeah, and I think for the rest of the family, I've been really lucky. I've had the same one for 4 years, but the kids, we've kind of had to trial and error. Their personalities won't fit with one, so we have to try another one. And that's hard because you have to go through everything with each new therapist. So luckily we found one good one that now all 3 younger ones are going to. So hopefully that stays for a while.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good insight and helpful to know, because I think that is something that people deal with a lot as they're trying to find a good therapist, is how to manage all of that. What did others do or say that was particularly helpful? If somebody is, as usually I ask about the caregivers, how can caregivers support? But I think in this situation, the whole family needs support. what are things that you would recommend or offer, like suggest to people as advice for if they have a friend or loved one who's going through something like this as an individual or as a family? What things could they offer or do or say that you think would be helpful?
So one thing that was so important that I didn't realize it until I went through it was just show up. For people to just come to the hospital and just like give me a break and just sit and talk with me, or let's go for a drink, or let's get you out of the hospital and go to Target. Like, to have people just show up. Because when someone texts you or calls you and asks you what you need, you don't know what you need. But we had so many people that would come sit every single night with Avery at the hospital. They would take turns so that we could go to the hotel and actually sleep. We had people bring us meals at the hospital. We had people taking care of our kids. These things that you don't realize, that if people were to ask me, I wouldn't know. But in the first at the hospital, it was just so nice for people just to show up. And so that's one of the biggest things I tell people now is when they're going through anything hard in life, just show up. Just show up at their house. Don't ask them. They're not going to tell you what they need or want. Just show up with a treat or let them cry, whatever they need to do. Just, show up is so important.
I have to agree. I don't know, just people doing even just simple things like sending me a text, just saying, hey, like, I think you're incredible and I hope you're having a really good day. Like, can I call you later and we can catch up? Just simple things, just showing that like people care about me and care about how I'm doing and care about, my situation. It meant a ton.
Yeah. And I think as a mom also, I recognize like as soon as we had so much support in the hospital, but the day she walked out, most of it stopped. Everybody thinks she's out of the hospital. She's good. But they don't see that 24 hours a day, I'm still the caregiver now. Monitor on, like all night. That's when you really need to reach out. That's when you need to show up and give them a break. Like, people need breaks. People need adult conversation that's not just about your child's injury. I think it's kind of like when somebody has a baby. It's super exciting at first, and then you just kind of stop. But as moms, like, we need that support. We need people. We need texts, calls, people to show up. It just doesn't stop after someone's out of the hospital and doing well.
Yeah. Yes. Because there's still a lot of recovery that is happening, and it is still very demanding on everybody. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. Thank you for sharing those things. So what are you mentioned the chronic pain. Are there other things that you're still dealing with today, I guess, and the hearing loss there? What are you dealing with still, and what keeps you going?
So chronic pain is the biggest one. That is definitely a very difficult thing to live with. And being half deaf, I've learned to find ways to help with that, but that's also a struggle because half the time I won't hear someone, I still do have some like forgetfulness. So I've had to find things that help. Like, I always set reminders on my phone. I put everything in my calendar. I make lists. I have a calendar on the fridge. I make like lists of, okay, meals for the week. What are we doing? Okay, this is all I have to do. So making a list and being like organized and just kind of like making sure I'm like writing down or putting in my phone like everything that I need to remember, everything I need to do. That has been super helpful as well.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. And what do you find that you're passionate about these days?
So like I said before, I love photography. I love taking pictures of especially couples, but people in general. It makes my soul so happy. I have no other words to explain it. Yeah, it's hard because Utah is a very saturated market for photography. Everyone has someone already, because everyone who owns a camera claims they can take pictures. But yeah, I've just been trying to put effort and work into that. I have a website now. Been doing my Instagram with that. And then, like I said before, I had a podcast, which I'm a bit not really consistent with that as much anymore. But I've kind of transitioned it to the Bravery Effect. I started an Instagram, which is just the _bravery_effect. play on my name. But that's been awesome just because I have been wanting to document and bring more knowledge about brain injuries to people about, okay, this is like what I've been through. This is what I deal with. Like, this is how I have to live now. This is like how I help myself like with these struggles. And really, I want to inspire people. I want people to be like, okay, you know what? She did that. I can get through what I'm going through. Like, I can still be happy. I can still have a great life. I can, do all that I want to. I don't know. Like I said before, life can be really hard, and this is not a perfect world, and there's a lot of struggles. But that's not to say that it can't be an incredible life. And I want people to know that.
Amen, sister. That's beautiful. Thank you. Kaylee, do you have any other questions that you want to make sure that we ask these guys before we hop off here?
I just wanted a quick reminder, like, who was your favorite therapist, like, working with? No, I'm just kidding.
Favorite vision therapist?
Her name started with K.
No, I'm totally kidding. No, I'm really grateful and I'm so excited. I love your passion for spreading the word and letting people know they're not alone, and that it's so good to have this, because people, I feel like right now, everybody I talk to has some insane thing going on in their life, whether it's a brain injury or whatever it is, you name it, somebody's going through it. And I feel like you learn so much through brain injury like this as a family, as individuals, to learn what it means to persevere well and find joy in a moment, because each moment passes. And I feel like you're a great example of that. So I guess I just wanted to reiterate that.
Kaylee, you were also really great during Avery's recovery, to have met you and you tell me your story about your brain injury. Like, that gave me so much hope. Like, that was really helpful.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that.
You're good. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, you guys, for being here and sharing all of this. Are there any last words of advice, wisdom, things that you've learned that you want to make sure gets out there that we haven't shared yet?
Wear helmets. With it being Brain Injury Awareness Month, it is so important to wear helmets in all activities. I was a huge helmet fan before. You probably would have had a head injury.
They said it would still be very similar if I had.
But I feel like you wouldn't be deaf.
Maybe.
You wouldn't have hit your ear. It would have hit the helmet.
Maybe.
We really try to push helmets. I have like a garage full of helmets that I give neighbor kids, and
love it.
It's just not pushed enough.
Mm-hmm. Did you know, I think there's a group out there, the pink concussion group. Have you heard of them at all? They talk about how women get impacted by brain injury typically than men, statistically. And they actually, I think they offer some sort of program with like discounted helmets or something like that. Anyways.
Oh, that's cool. Yes. I'm all about helmets.
Me too.
I'm into that. Helmets all the way for all the people, all the time.
Yes.
Awesome. Check your brain, dang it.
Protect your brain.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing this and sharing your light. And we will put the links to how people can find you and hear more about your story in the show notes. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys sharing today. Thank you for being here.
Of course. Yeah, thank you.
I'm so glad you listened in today. I hope you have gained some helpful insights and inspiration regarding dealing with and recovering from concussions. My goal is to create more awareness and education about concussions and the fact that there is so much that can be done to improve life after someone has had one. Help me spread the message by liking, commenting, rating, and subscribing to this podcast, and share it with others who would benefit from hearing it. There are more resources available on my website. And again, if you or someone you love would benefit from concussion coaching, sign up for a free consultation using the link in the show notes or at my website, www.theconcussioncoach.com. Thank you. See you next time, and take good care of that amazing brain of yours.